feedback is critical. Wait, pause. It just kicked me out, or because the recording. Okay, wait, sorry. Okay, you're good. All right. The advantage is, I think I finished. Anti-space business model fit with back for implementation. The advantage of space law. International space law isn't equipped for privatization of space, but U.S.-led space antitrust checks erosion allows for international harmonization from Boston 21. International space law not equipped to deal with the private sector interests, mitigate the risk, anti-competitive behavior, ethical, legal safeguards, enable the expansion, allow for safe antitrust and fragmentation, antitrust bound to avoid space and other ethical space antitrust, first equal necessity, antitrust and property law, involving parallel space and emergency international framework, international harmonized, antitrust framework, space antitrust that can reduce foreign shopping, fragmentation, conflict laws, international space law no longer suffices, antitrust prevent space law, erosion, privatization of space, it's running space law, erosion causes space erosion, how longer 19 international law regulates the use of space, however, foreign countries are making use of space as private companies under soft law, space law, conflict with national law, unacceptable working on legitimacy should use space as a property. This is a direct road to confrontation. National research, the consequences of space wars, private international space law rules, settlement, especially when lead to fair capture, redistribution will lead to space wars. They go nuclear, road nuclear deterrence, farley, 22 war on space war attacks and anti-sats and produce and disclosure situation between main power sats are the connected tissue, nuclear deterrence, states are target enemy sats, and space military assets, nuclear conventional rules, confusion, suicide, rapidly go through the mind, choose to preempt damage to commit, force traffic onto nuke system, confronting the issue, international harmonization prevents extinction from resource depletion, human rights abuse, and war. Mod 13. Relation to the absence of mitigating factors into accommodation, destruction, war, the condition of war against everyone. States assess capabilities, jumping motor security, zero, some co-op is difficult, and all states the key is mitigating the security norms, expansion tendencies from benign the existing world created by the U.S. disputes resulting in negotiation rather than war, which states such as Korea, Iran, China will use force agreements over trade, single acquiescence to the order, accommodation law, actually symbolize commitment to go hand in hand, regulations, reform, end of command, economies, the surest way to remove the war, conserve, restore, protect human rights, is an agreement under a normative umbrella that promotes values of convergence that can be effective through stepwise internalization, economic values, most notably through adoption of international antitrust and private appropriation results in arbitrary valuation of businesses. Space industry monopolization, which innovation causes armed conflict stress, and 1003. Private hearing artificial intelligence by evaluation claim no success, the pursuit of subsidiary rights neither is related to the use of research private ownership, but as the innovating cost of cutting continuing conventional monopolies under the anti-competitive practice, but restricting space commerce, association, example by lunar embassy, even then vacuum the price reduction of unstable or manipulative application of the non-appropriation would be anti-ethical commercialization, competing claims would create international tensions on conflict with off of this planet. Uniform rules of the road, check Russian and Chinese states, otherwise they crush space dominance, cause one war and deck among allies. Shout 20. Satellites are owned by space Russian, China, RPO guidelines are created critical U.S. Satellites powerful instrument to balance capabilities in space. Target of attacks is not to that's what China will have an advantage. China will disable subsequently later when have a dependency really use for more fighting capabilities and risk cut among allies. The U.S. could prevent by creating more comprehensive regime. China, Russia, RPO constellation could be vulnerable. ASATs eliminate critical service. Chinese ASAT attacks on nuclear buildings, putting the most worst and flash when in orbit. The military use satellites for warfare, basically the ultimate high ground. China, a risk of conflict that could destroy the entire planet's space infrastructure and ignite full blown war on attempts to approaching a boiling project. Attacks of ASATs weapon by China. China particularly demonstrate the need to destroy the U.S. satellites, the U.S. attempting diplomacy with minimal success, the failure of the diplomatic solutions, and limited hostile actions against satellites could easily escalate to nuclear shanty each and every satellite, so because the improvements remain unwritten. Taiwan conflict caused a global nuclear war, and 21 accidents, miscalculation, conflict, escalation, nuclear war. Taiwan is supposed to nuclear war with popular backing, growing independence, as well attention to contain a nuclear war, universalizing principle under the OC creates rules of the road for sustainable space activities. We're in Boston. 21. Space antitrust is flexible yet decides to do and train prediction of OC for competition, non-harmful interference, adaptive governance mechanism, reaffirm the importance of space traffic management, so as with freezing fragmentation, power to intervene, interest power to intervene, commercial sector, legal board means of navigating loophole setting, customary practice, lack of trust and truth, put to develop binding, issue for CMS, safety prevention, routine for space zoning, rid of the way rules, prioritization, right to maneuver, security rules, specific rules for LEO, satellite consultation, debris mitigation, regulation, environmental prevention, radio frequency use, and avoid interference, anti-competitive behavior should be precluded. STM reverse culturally solves debris solution. 18 commercially solves regulation for protecting pollution can be financially ruinous. Management of the rules of the road and only states can establish under current rules coordinated international standards, efficient and less confusing, establishing conflict-free environments because responsible to commercial ops have become to appreciate government reduction of debris nature, constant need of updating, analyzing, and supplementing and also extras demand of space debris, increasing million debris objects on orbit debris, cascades, nuclear war, Johnson 13 is how to destroy runaway collision because cascading, destroy every satellite, LEO, rendering orbits unusable, add the destruction of the U.S. Of the military depend on space. The is always a nightmare world, nuclear war, economic disaster, mass starvation, aviation, shipping, emergency services, and or reliant on satellites, monitor armed treaties and military activities. China, Russia, Iran, and Ilko. Lucy, these would place militaries on higher low GPS for and foci bonds, navigate weather without military advantage, so would be eliminated. Extinction PND 16, even if the others knowledge will so make the world and inhabit reducing global famine. Last decades, the nuclear war could produce a nuclear winter, resulting in self-assured destruction. Small nuclear war of the producing smoke of the ice age, allowing ultraviolet radiation studies predict the actual production would decline by 20%, cause the deaths of all humans and other species. Nuclear weapons used to humans survive with the immediate state of accomplishment, not the framework. The standard is maximizing expected well-being. Death is better in ways ontologically destroys the subject. Patterson one death ontologically destroys the subject. Death is destructive of the type of entity that we are is drastically interferes with the person objective evil. Any rejection of life is an expression of disvalue. Extinction outweighs a point of structural violence. Death causes suffering because people can't get access to resources and basic necessities, which outweighs, especially since we have the harmonization stuff. So assume that post-app will solve neither impacts people and comes up for value to life. Life is superior. Access short to the determination value to life is subject to maybe with the percentage excuse that value is by personal one that ought not be externally by another person. The individual must be given an opportunity to decide for themselves whether they think the lives are worth living. Third is mathematically outweighs mathematical 14. We have reason for extinction has 2 to the 10 to the 14 extinction is irreversible in time. We'll have a better evidence. If we did research, we would know that whether people are positive, the cost of waiting is small compared with keeping options open. The other view. One everything is legit, anything else we say infinite, one is drop the one is too short to wait for the time trade-off, should be still lost up in a row, so less likely repeated back to the conclusion, competing into feasibility is arbitrary, encourages judge intervention, since the nuclear model may be raised to the top of the best norms that too often, why risk means that they can be forced to time use reasonability on one is shows are infinitely unpredictable, since they're infinitely unpredictable, since we obviously don't know what they could be insofar as the new app only app gets RBS and counter interpretations for a minute, one of your needs to be able to collapse the highest layer of with those 1 6 minutes under if I overcover, they'll kick in and behind us substance theoretical reasons for the RBI outweigh substance one NC theory shows their function which is devastating collapse, even if the reasons why the RBI might be logical, a theoretical reason for it, we should have it to dedicate to in our time. Now, outweighs affirming is definitely harder. 8 is that 6 force means that on any layer, especially reactivity with multiple coaches, constructing the perfect NC means that they'll outweigh every time. 2B is that even if it was a new referendum, generics can solve a lot of your offense, and means that prescriptive 2 hours prior to the TOC definitely outweigh. Third is that even if they win some reasons why infinite prep time, etc., to create a new affirmative, remember that this affirmative was debated by other people and by peninsula debaters as well, which means they definitely should have prep on it. So that could definitely comes in right with that applies to the Bartlett reusability. And I'm good. And it just accepted some arguments at the interview.
Okay. Did you read the RBI thing?
Yeah.
Okay. What was extended below that? I heard affirming was harder.
Yeah, affirming is harder. The 6-4 skew.
What was the argument after that?
It was the reactivity stuff. Even if there's like the NC is always reactive, generics check.
Okay.
Large coaching squads.
The plan, what is a higher ethical principle of outer space? None of your cards define it. I've looked it up. I don't know what it is. Doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's the first sentence. It could be something like these principles of equality and free access, which is in Article 1 of the OST. We would apply that to preclude monopolies.
Okay. The space law advantage, I guess. Or I guess currently which countries are, or which I guess companies are engaging in antitrust practices.
So this is this Stearns and Tennant evidence. We've identified that some companies are engaging in these privateering and this appropriation
can you name some companies that are doing this in the status quo?
I can't name them, but the plan would definitely apply to anything that
you don't know which companies are doing these.
No, because obviously it's sort of flexible.
That are engaging in these practices.
That's not the argument here. The argument is just that we can see these practices. I think we had talked this one example in this card. I can give you one example here. It's that there was originally 17,700 acre tracts of moon that were $16, and then sort of monopolization consolidation of that land by these things called by the Lunar Embassy or Hope, etc. Now that's the price for 1 acre. We would say that would be an example of something like that. But fine. Obviously I can't laundry list those companies.
Great. I guess the Rimbasan card.
Which one?
The first one? The first one at the top of the advantage. Or actually, no, the plan. What is rule of the road?
Yeah. The rules of the road are just things that are just align ourselves with these OST principles. It's just international harmonization efforts.
Okay, so just international what are examples of those types?
Yeah, so it would sort of be this stuff that we talk about, quelling these RPO sort of pushes by Russia and China, stuff like that, to align them with things just international norms to prevent aggression and stuff like that. That would be an example, I guess.
Okay, the Chow card, I guess. How does ASATs cause Taiwan war? This seems to just have an internal argument about how ASATs could lead the US engaging conflict. I guess why does Taiwan get
right. So the argument here is that currently states are pushing for measures and guidelines to be able to mess with to be able to do these things called rendezvous proximity operations. We read other evidence the card right after that says that China and Russia have this interest to disable US military satellites. That causes miscalculation because military satellites are a unique advantage in the South China Sea and near Taiwan, and we think that escalation is likely, which is the that's the Gerson evidence.
I guess the Larson the Larson card. What is STM reversal?
Yeah, that would be just space traffic management. We would say that would reverse causally solve. Oh wait, are you asking what that is? It would just be regulatory protection for commercial space operations.
Okay, I'm sending. It's too often the case. It'll be framing, the solvency page, then the space. Actually, no, I'll take some prep.
Oh, okay.
Okay. 344 left. I'll put that in chat. Order is still 2 off case. It'll be on case, it'll be the underview, framing, solvency, and then the advantage.
I'll let you know when I have it.
Okay.
Well, yeah, the only thing that changed in the order, just the underview, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Don't have it yet.
Well, yeah, it just sense.
Oh
I
no,
don't-
sorry, no worries.
Wait, have you sent it already?
Hello? Oh, what did you say?
Have you sent it the doc already?
Yeah, I did. I think I hit reply all. Let me check. Yeah, I did. So I'm not sure if someone can get it. Might just be my email is like pretty slow.
For whatever reason, I don't have it yet.
Does anyone else have it?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought I was the only one.
Oh, that's bizarre.
I just got it.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, okay.
I haven't gotten it. 1 sec. Okay, I just got it. All right.
One second.
Yeah, you're good.
Copying it into Flexo.
What's the order on the app again?
Underview, framing, solvency, advantage. Oh, like solvency is like the plan part, but they delineated as that.
All right, I'm good.
Joni, Matt. So, okay, everyone good? All right.
Yeah, I'm good.
Incorporating the program plus my type of state over here plus from Nigeria rules within the hot and rules limits one to generic sensitive regard to rules of each generic notes where the rules of defense center should be more or less specific with generic set of offensive things me as we values to specify anti-struct negative particular limits and a type of reputation obviously useful to the topic and
Clear.
appropriation limiting exposed negative preparation draws unmistakable lines of debate was always had complete interpretations cases yes no question you can be reasonably topical to answer the underview argument no argument is launching access for premium fair educational otherwise when everyone plus one to see to debate of these theory and of losing at a product kind of interpretation for living basically the three collapses the highest layers of all because the average way answer the underview argument next up solid colonialism the onslaught of permeate structure nation which requires elimination of the digital life land being the occupation of the cell with the appropriation of land into ghosts and child slaves into excess labor taking hold of the horizons of the cell colonization taking required total appropriation of indigenous living land then assistance on sovereignty overall the extent of economic social compatibility disruption indigenous relationship and represents emphasis on total cosmological violence child slaves excess labor labor can have to be paid because the payment would have to be forward with property land so was the first not just by decolonization meant for lots of people equate contradictory decolonialism decolonization and empty significant any scratch of liberation decolonization Muslim repatriation of land extinctions and empty superlative that Jesus with global demise and max structural compatibility but how we vote violence is driving extinction assigned their argument zero risk ritual 17 extinction become the emblem of Western views by the end of the IR world of chambers conservative embody and on time here from commissions as for sex and nuclear destructive extinction become an empty secluded justice to active form unthinkability sees of Western subject the images that generalize the minds of my driven experiences and the fear extinction contributes to the formation of Western subject contemplating the destruction of humanity opposite the role of exception discourses on extinction appear to address systemic destruction while matching music instant the most capability to perpetuate structures of violence that extinction is embodiment of particular forms of structural violence that is frequently affected specific groups are heavily nice to try to recognize that artificially creates the benefits of state's extension and it drives modern state's activities meta within a broader meta narrative as self on earth with space being analogous to the final frontier that settlers are not to be destined to exploit the profitability of space extension narrative then justifies all violent calculus of colonialism by positing as the natural relation between humans earth and the cosmos leads the alternative explains their opposite we control the root cause the 20 project advance space extension gain intellectual power because they're embedded within a larger meta narrative of humanity earth and the cosmos rather than some of its charge because it advances the narrative whole offering a macro historical planetary account of human development and narrative place to new historical analogies suggesting expansion to outer space continue to expansion across earth geographic future notably of frontiers and analogies and humans to expand habitat to further isolation conquest colonization there's an antitrust and competition law takes sellers economics for granted. The notion of competitive advantage is on atomized Cartesian economic agent that is inseparable from Western individualist ideology. You should refuse the false concept of competition or class and instead understand that the myopic crackdown on non-Western relationality, cooperative exchange relationship, liberal IR theory is just as much as depends on the notion of progress, individual constitution, and democratic as bastions of equality, specifically into their assumptions. The FBR of 5 liberal social theory privileges individual rights, denigrates community arrangements founded on a Western notion of progress, liberalism, accounts for processes such as corruption and independence, impairment under universal specifically good light defined in materials, ratification, reciprocal gratification, understanding the space for place of Western theorization, a place of neutral space that will get indigenous people of colonial theory by creating cultural links to be built in high peaceful development, bigger and poker will tell the indigenous relationships place fundamentally challenge spatial concepts for indigenous people places central to life versus most Western societies derive meaning from historical developments of anything in space have become important colonial geographies, but they capital networks of relations along non-human animals and spirits participation of hierarchical organized spatially dislocated and temporally defined religions and course legislation and dislocation. That's the only alternative to decolonization. The role of the ballot is to center indigenous scholarship resistance. Any ethical community parts of the places held in the center of native scholarship and demand taking control. Unethical incompatibility sense of conscious reconciliation which motivates element to innocent reconciliation also rescuing some amount of investment celebratory reconciliation concerned with what we decolonization look like. We will find the excuse to get their decolonization on innocent elsewhere. Our interpretation of the judge ought to value the one he as a research project with the material implementation of the case one plan focus restricts the bit to 10 seconds and leaves the rest of the app on question. They should be responsible for the way their knowledge is constructed and used because it produces the best model of activism and as the content of the abstract the critiques of the part question informs the value of the game. If we win debate students to be on the side of the round, should converse 3 performances. You're educated responsible for judging the behavior and tolerant reduction of the app. That means you take it to them. If we win a link argument for the critique is a prerequisite learning about outer students clean understanding is networks with topic education turns an inevitable clash off. It's 5 debate is a side of scholarship production, not pause making one even if individual values not change our subjectivities, iterative investment in research models, influence our political orientation, rejecting paradigms, premise on secularism, and pedagogical spaces can't act as a starting point for socials. For us, anti-settlerist vision of politics, 6 independently vote negative perception the affirmative does nothing but F1 produce the advantage discussions, but our critical arguments tells how we view politics and debate, so vote negative because the F can't but alter the deal of the world. The case the RW 7 is draw the very default any specific one for a shell too short isn't a warrant should be evaluated on case by case basis. Use reasonability on 183 anything less than 1 year to brute force. It's about a bunch of shells which move one to the offense. Affirming article has no implication. 52 the amount of times that a coin would flip heads if someone has hypothetically flipped a head a coin 100 times. Framing extinction versus bad where one of risk of extinction focus paralyzes action any actions of risk of extinction, but so actually we have to listen to her random person who holds the job out of the building right now or else extinction will happen. Second we don't know what ethically about we don't know about more time to figure things like structural balance of races is wrong if they're highly that vote negative 3 this is another just at 1% risk change option to intervening in the Middle East for a false threat which is where political solution cost massive stopping this exactly European politics at all because she criticizes or use rational utilitarian ways of value of calculated body type but that calculates lots of policy exercise purely rational decision making machines by like ways that we can't experience ethical ban in the first place that people are actually suited by the calculated logic security the Patterson evidence we agree that death is bad but we have different conceptions of what we should prefer. Ontology means that ontology means that sellers have a sort of ontological desire in order to eliminate indigeneity, which means that we turn the death off into structural or violence argument not substantiated how so sort of there are often turn structural violence which doesn't matter. There's Schwartz evidence about value to life there value to life outweighs because it controls whether or not we can have life in the first place. The McCaskill argument is just using mathematics. There's no reasons why this specifically implicates the critique. The solvency page no separate it's not happening right now so it impacts outweigh immediacy. That was 160x no still over the first piece of the evidence. The only one that comes close to the prediction non-prescriptive. It says that we could have spaced all this use of suppression not that it would be presumed negative. They are so limited instance that their plan is too big that anyone can get around which is the perception of solvency actually doesn't do anything to be versus 2 business was there's no such thing as higher ethical principles of outer space treaty. Literally run a Google check there and finding the money they don't to do in the 1 year system fairness forces to know whenever we started last year if they but the plan she's told the line to there's no definition of what anti-competitive business practices are which means everyone just claim they're not anti-competitive. Even New Lafayette's course previously in person cleaning SCOTUS Newman Matthews federal course representative basis only God request me anti-judge matter because I've written first law request for sending a judge know how to harass structurally awarded law ideological driven justice and find a way around enforcing the physical such using solid truths that judges will be limits the institutional power in the area and market area and monopolies to any job less of the advantage turns the F young anti-government employees not operate with the only public issues in lie. They makes regulators all know the Baptist and bootlegger dynamic. Baptist and the bootlegger here is like bringing source of close for different reasons. FCC being inclined to listen to the corporate bootleggers, but with social treatment Oracle brands on independent Microsoft and Gastric and Microsoft clearly went to Templar's campaign. Generate advantage just how evidence makes sense. RPOs developed by states and companies. They can apply antitrust to the PRC or Russia monopolies use antitrust law to their actually. I just read that no space where ingrained normative frameworks are altruability and space prevents escalation. Before the immature 19 despite recurring properties and research complex and broken out the space of remain peaceful limited accessibility attributable north environmental independence flow framework of the 6 decades of peace north and deeply embraced the rhetoric of fixing spaces peaceful states perceive consequently the tradition to moderate behaviors how possible deniability etc impossible high diplomatic costs his react as a strong deterrent more 6 conventional autonomy seems kind of dismissed consider US cheating against the world and player estimate the likelihood of nuclear presence between there are reasons for optimism China set up for non-aggressive nuclear doctrine mark the credit doctrine nuclear power isn't existential at no credible scenario for extinction outdated different size growth into the understanding nuclear tax and counterclass or exceed any had humanity service closely lodged not withstand scrutiny limiting lives in safe states nuclear weapons have the most significant consequence of the effect nuclear wars not non-existential event and attack over 1,000 subsequent atomic and thermonuclear tests were still here for books of Paula, reinforced by the influential novel after Paula was better understood. The idea can have little no scientific basis, simply no credible scenario in which humans do not repopulate this space beings had their thousands of dollars, only 15 collisions ever relative 16 population down grades collisions in space. Almost all of these articles are exaggerate, misleading, it's not a crisis. All causes to Johnson they can't solve. I inserted when I see Johnson in green.
Can you send a marked?
Yeah. You want to start CX?
Yeah, I guess. Or I kind of need the case page really quickly, so if you could send it.
I think sending docs should be in CX.
All right, I got you. I'll start it. Yeah, just send it while it's going on. I started the timer. All right, cool. I'll just let you know when I got it. The critique, can you explain the links?
We have made like a bunch of link arguments. Like, do you want me to just go through each one?
Like, I guess, yeah, sure. So the first one, can you explain it?
First one's Tucking Yang usage of the state is bad because you made an ontological claim about settlerism being a permeating structure. Mitchell evidence extinction's an empty superlative. That is bad. We think it's sort of papers over settlerist violence in the fear that extinction, will harm us all. And we've argued that you should assign these arguments zero risk because settlers always try to use extinction as this kind of metaphor in order to mask, how settlers try to, sort of eliminate indigeneity in that process. The third argument is like the antitrust link argument I made, which is that the 1AC is kind of like a ruse of consent that operates through the coercive invocation of existential impacts to sort of maintain imperial violence.
Isn't that like
Actually,
the same as the
that's a
extinction
beer
one?
one. What?
Is that not the same as the extinction one?
No, because this one's specific to ILO. Sorry, that was the BR one. I made like an analytic link argument about antitrust as well.
Yeah, could you explain
Sorry.
Could you explain the analytic one really quickly?
The analytic one? Yeah, we've kind of argued that the AF's kind of conception of competition law assumes a settlerist economic view of the world, which we've argued is bad.
Okay, got it. And the alternative, can you explain what it does?
What the alternative does, it affirms decolonization.
So affirming that, does it actually fiat that?
How are we specific? It's not a question of whether or not we fiat land return, but rather using decolonization as a framework for how we view our politics.
So
Our argument is not-
using it as a framework, what would that do? Like, what are the
it
effects
would
of that?
do? Like, what do you mean? What it would do? How does that help you either? What do we do when you
Like, I'm asking, would the alternative result in the app, or like would it solve the app? Like,
result in the app? Well, we can make arguments. Well, we've substantiated in the Dudney card how the alternative would solve the app because we made an argument about how like settlerism controls the internal link to like how we can view these conceptions of threats in the first place and space.
I mean, it might control the internal link, but how is that reverse causal? I.e., removing those conceptions will just suddenly stop like realist thought and aggression.
Well,
like, is
if
that?
you think about it, like, what? Sorry, I'm confused with the question. Can you repeat that?
Like just simply removing this like settler thought. How does that remove like
what do you mean
realist
removing
framework?
settler thought? I think you're
Like,
misunderstanding the argument. We're not metaphorical per se. We affirm land return, but like obviously what we do in debate, like me reading this in one round is obviously not going to like return all land to indigenous people. But our argument is that this kind of ideology that we affirm is something that we think is good. We've made this debate a question about which method should be affirmed, and we've argued that decolonization is a good way to orient our politics.
Cool. And that's fine. Okay, that's in the junior. All right, cool. I'll take prep. Oh, wait. Actually, before that, let me just check. Wait. Yeah, just download the thing.
What?
Oh, I'm just sorry. I'm starting prep. Yeah. Were there any arguments that were exempted on the framework page?
Arguments that extend all the answers to the 1AC arguments were exempted.
All right.
Like the answers to Max.
Yeah.
All that. Yeah. But you started prep, right?
Yeah, I did. All right, stop prep 2:30 use. Let me send it. Oh, let me type it.
Okay, what's the order?
The framework, the advantage, TK.
Is there a solvency page?
Yeah. Oh, I just put the solvency and then the advantage.
Okay, framework, solvency, advantage, T, critique.
Yeah. All right, should be sent. Framework first on the K.
What do you mean framework? Oh, like framework interp?
Yeah.
Okay. I see. Oh, like the framework sec. Yeah. I see.
Mhm.
I was confused for a second.
Let's get the recording ready. Hold on.
I'm good whenever.
Okay.
It says case on the bottom, but there's like nothing there. So.
Yeah, that's just from previous stuff.
All right. I'm good.
All right. Is everyone else good?
Yep.
All right, cool. Quickly eliminating the 1 to 7. First is wrong. Some actions have more risk than others. Russia, China looking to actively destroy military satellites as much will probably to cause escalations too. Is wrong. Moral uncertainty is still true. It's about solutions rather than what's actually wrong. Maybe the all isn't the best material approach, so we should deliberate more, or look to another, or the all is the best approach. But after, since the app decisively happens faster, that'll be on the case. They're not 1% risk, extremely high winning the app, turning fear-based politics, since people do fear for bodily security and want to stay alive. Anything else is anti-natalist and intuitive. 4 is realism is true. Hidden in the mon evidence. States are capable of assessing moves in international fear. Proves that calculation is possible and that it's rational. 5. Natives are not excluded from security. Security politics obviously includes protecting societies instead of state. B point. Life is a huge prerequisite to prevent the possibility of pleasure in the future. So you should that native lives are worth saving. 6 is like links are not offense because they don't outweigh the absence. The African compassion always on magnitude. 7 is that if they agree that death is bad, then extinction is just that death, but orders of magnitude across the world. Ontology does not turn death either. The quality of life and the stuff does not matter, since on a purely physical consequential field, then it doesn't matter. Also, we just get neutral responses because this this analysis was super blippy. But insofar as we're running a general thesis of materialism and extinction always doesn't matter. The advantage. Application of antitrust law solves space source and of resource disputes and ambiguity within the OSC that escalates. States have incentives to attack nuclear command and control satellites, collapse deterrence, and cause preemptive first strikes and nuclear war and everywhere, and specifically in Taiwan. 2nd is that antitrust creates frameworks embedded in the OSC for sustainable space. That was above. It solves Kessler and debris through space targeting management and etc. Spiraling, hitting military satellites, causing physical and escalation. The solvency page. Yes, time frame. That will be on the K about aggression happening now. Yes, below it's descriptive because that's our enforcement mechanism, i.e., principle. 2nd is that the precedent will be quickly adopted. Drop that private firms want regulation to protect their assets from debris, and states also want to call that aggression as well. It's not a subtly move to infinity when that it isn't vague. Yes, there are higher ethical principles. First sentence insolvency, and we specified in CX. No shiftiness. The plan is generally adaptive, so it doesn't matter. 3rd is a yes definition of anti-competitiveness. That was our CX explanation. Monopolies that horse supply chains. Human evidence. First is international federal courts will still process norms that are from higher authority. 2nd, Republican courts still hit big business when they hurt small firms, especially small U.S. firms. Monopolies won't use law for the advantage. Remember, international crackdowns and negotiations prevent abuse. Antitrust does work well. Resources companies they talk about are national monopolies. They control the antitrust principles when applied to spill over to a broader regime and applied to states, which is all the Boston risk. Plan is a link turn to the snow space source stuff. It's we created an ingrained normative framework which outweighs current frameworks are shredded because of forum shopping. We want war won't stay conventional. Drop that satellite attacks are coming are an indicator of larger, broader attacks between the escalation ring. Will run up the escalation ladder. Yes, U.S. China war. SES tensions are at a whole time. And China is a vested interest in Taiwan from sacred commitments. Remember, is accidental from debris, water, bears, and stuff don't matter. If from nukes that we would just fire. Yes, credible scenario testing assumes a smaller scale and lack of conventional follow-on. Cato evidence. Also, yes, it's existential, but doesn't assume new nuclear capability that cause ICs. The other debris management stuff or the app solves that, and current scope things just increase the risk. T. Contribution aspects of appropriation 8 points of medicine improve the difference in Jews and LPT lords provide the 2.1% mosquito care sufficient Jews even lower. 2nd, appropriation based meaningless terms specification number 8 point transposition B point better for topic and filters semantics words are contextual. Only 3 months of topic person 19. They also please unanswered whether consider appropriation very low some lot actually held in context based pragmatics 5 big hijacks background 1 hour you can recontextualize her class creating late debates picks and 1 and seasons make country appropriation picks out waiver reversibility 1 hour recover class appropriation contextual aspect is better in-depth learning but different mechanisms move past policy as monolith debates all linguistic intuition interpret the rest based on pragmatic checks 4 on ceiling sufficient critical interpreting the topics vital to non-transition non-transition time functional limits solve yes check based only 4s mining space all constellation moon plus limits over limiting produces sales base which kills research and class the K starting with framework Framework where the Vienna constantly planning the impact of the K bonus fairness rating competition supersede and after the battle flowing lose arbitrary framework just the one to see from influence the one to see public fairness always games balance playing fields only procedure impacts your balance solver clash predictable way force engagement levels result in the winner key to rigorous idea testing self reflexivity extinction always says free opposite conclusivity to get you all your dead people process and practice suffering through incineration that's now painful with the consent they don't decide for beliefs of native people that find value in life in the world the case always on time frame China Russia attacks are getting reckless now pushing for aggressive space policy try to counter US satellites that creates rapid escalation miscalculation which was on the case the framework and research project limits to limits there's no telling what they can test creates thin debase the line plan focus not 5 seconds in the plan 55 of extinction and consequences activism ethics aren't guaranteed so only clash matters K-Part questions does not impact debate debates below violence isn't denied performances that judges and educators turns offense you should promote clash no obligation to intervene only the consequences matter the George Bush had no reason or representation or bad material consequences solved we hate them for foreign policy etc hates poor people presumption we access the urge to because we are general humanism rest will pull up as well we just get the benefit of the app as well all of their link arguments this is an impact debate colonial violence does not matter insofar as extinction generally outweighs and link turns all of their opposites even if they're winning the link turns case the alternative definitely can't solve for case permutation do both permutation do the app decolonization can happen earlier space policy management can happen out there also the alternative can't solve case because the debris management sort of needs to happen through an international framework because otherwise it causes forum shopping
344 right now. Wait, sorry. It was perm after like colonial violence all can't solve. It was like perm do both.
Perm do both. Perm do the AF and space management and do decolonization on Earth. It's just like it's another perm do both explanation, but it's just like it's like that process perm like do the AF the mindset and process of the old.
Okay. What was the answer to the performance just had?
The performance system?
Mm-hmm.
Was it is this just the is this just generic stuff like the status and stuff?
It's fine, whatever.
Oh, sorry, this is on framework. I have it if you want. It said the judge as an educator turns offense since you should promote clash. So give us the afterway.
Great.
And then there's another one. You have no obligation to intervene. If we both have isolated consequences that should matter, let debaters debate.
Yeah. All right. Order is the critique, then the case. Case, it will be framing, solvency, advantage. Yes.
Is it K, is it going to be framework than the actual K, or I have like framework on a separate sheet, that's why.
Oh, yeah, you can do framework like at the very top. of
Okay,
the
cool.
critique. I think that's fine. Yeah.
All right, thanks. I'm good whenever. Or wait, actually not yet. 1 second. All right, now I'm good.
I mean, I don't know about the judges, but like since the 1AR did framework at the top of the critique, I guess I can just do that as well. Fine.
I'm good whenever.
Anyone not ready? All right.
Unfortunately, the 1AR just missed a lot of matrix that the 1C already put. For example, the Mitchell evidence indicates that there is zero risk of an extinction impact in the affirmative, which means that you can just vote affirmative and the negative on any risk of link. And they also drop, for example, arguments of how the critique controls the root cause of the vast majority of the firms. Opposite will explain, but on the thesis of the critique at the top, I'll do the framework debate. I don't need to win it, given that all I need to win is risk of link to vote negative, given that they drop that there is no risk of an extinction impact and that we control the root cause of the vast majority of the office, but I'll win it anyway because any risk of link should be a TKO. First of all, they drop that judge should prioritize centering indigenous scholars for resistance issue for your ball because it means that only by asking ourselves we are resituated in terms of relationship to soul land can we access and lay out for framework for politics. Scholars do not have the grammar and language to articulate the bonds of solid colonialism. So educational spaces, but indigenous voices invisible and permanent. So only recentering indigenous scholarship can truly and settle educational spaces and provide a pathway to decolonization, which over determines how you evaluate things like extinction because it provides a rule for what debate will look like. It's not the same thing as a framework interpretation because it determines what kind of impacts are relevant under that frame. But the framework interpretation determines how you should evaluate the 1AC holistically. Anyway, I'm going to go for the performance set on framework proper. It implicates the vast majority of their audience because it means that judges should ultimately take care of the affirmative if they win that the affirmative performance in this round is something that is fundamentally bad. Our argument that we put in the 1AC is specific to this. It indicates that an educator responsible for judging this quality production of the affirmative should take care of the affirmative with a link argument. For example, arguments like, for example, if the affirmative does something racist in round and they do something fucked up, obviously they should lose. And their arguments just don't make any sense against it. They say an educator is good, they should allow for clash. Obviously, I'm going to answer the clash of, well, we should take that out. That relies on them winning their framework interpretation. They say judges should not have to intervene and let people decide for themselves, but that justifies and racist colonialist practices which justify the affirmative having horrible representations and just jettisoning them whenever they want. They have to prove that the specific application is good, but given that they dropped all the link arguments and you can just vote negative on any risk of link. Now, their framework interpretation proper, their interpretation is just a bad model for debate. First, their fairness that we are fair, maybe the burden of rejoinder by negating their justification, saying that we desire standards as bad equivalent to negating the standards. No reps link sort of justifies racist rhetoric. Justifications kind of determine the consequences of action. Second is that fairness does not matter because notions of equity are impossible due to technical and resource disparities. The only remaining value debate is the types and textures of our education. Three is not unless they vote about and should be forced to always kind of prejudice better AC than the first, the arbitrariness and clash stuff. No, you can see the specific reasons why focusing on indigenous research is key because we still have a jurisdictional obligation to forefront native scholarship. Second is that there's no reasons why you're not allowed to have clash. For example, if we underpoint the affirmative epistemology that still allows clash, you can defend your epistemology. That's reasons why we'd still be able to promote clash. You can justify why your scholarship production and method is good. That's a reason why I take that we are also currently situated on native land. This is a link to show arbitrary stuff because it means there are three parameters that structurally comes first. Now the theory, now the critique at the prop settler claims is an ontological topic that affirms everyday acts of intimate and over violence in the U.S. It is sustained by logical elimination. Therefore, the beliefs that natives are predestined to disappear as civilization events justifies the physical displacement and cultural extermination of indigeneity. Yeah, ways extinction because it sort of frames how you impact and conceptions of extinction in the first place. But settlers always try to project themselves in the name of humanism and ignore how settlers psyche is kind of overdetermined because they always recreate because they always try to recreate threats in order to distract away from settlerism, which is the thesis of the sort of Mitchell evidence. It outweighs the app. You should flip their impact calculus priorities indigenous settler because the literally written out the equation every term that results in internalization of colonialism and literal genocides, rather semi suicide, otherwise by the political natives more than any other group in the U.S. with psychological violence and calculable as an educator to adopt ethic that directly forefront that we should be always this about, which outweighs their impact. Now, the extinction outweighs that. This argument is irrelevant, and that the arguments are relevant. I won the sort of roll the ballot framing stuff. Obviously, not relevant. Second is that they don't get access to the Mitchell evidence in the root cause stuff. Which I'll do the root cause debate here. They conceded the Dooney evidence just explains how their sort of impacts are liberalized in the first place. The Dooney evidence is examples of things like how the quest for outer space domination and things like modern space activities and things like a war in the first place are embedded between a settler colonialist logic with space being analogized to the final frontier and settlers trying to project themselves, which controls the internal links to all their sort of ASAT stuff and debris in the first place. Given that this was completely dropped, this just proves that we control the root cause of the vast majority of the offense, and the alternative can also explain it, even if it doesn't solve it, which means that that just kind of circumvents the vast majority of the affirmative, means that cannot resolve their own offense. Now, that kind of takes up the extinction stuff, that a prerequisite argument of being able to engage with the alternatives is irrelevant. If you run the ontological claim, they do not have to get to the access to the permutation, which will do below. Their process argument is irrelevant. Their impact did not cause suffering. The incineration and radiation did not justify why that occurred. Through nuclear, where the case does not outweigh on time frame. They did not specify what companies even exist in the first place, which means that that argument is irrelevant. Now, I'll send the link arguments here. The Mitchell evidence was conceded. The one AC relies on extinction impacts fabricated to cell psyche in order to create a refusal of decolonization and a permeation of cellular wisdom. It says cellular instance that it tells indigenous people that their lives are valuable insofar as it's implicated by wet deaths of cellulars protect themselves in the future in the name of humanism. You should reject this appropriate pathway for cellular decolonization and assign their arguments zero risk, given that it's completely dropped. The second argument I'm going to go for is the ILON. Like, it turns the case. The one he sees a Bruce consent that operates to the course of invocation of existential impacts and maintain imperial lands. The entire Western affiliate orders contingent on the continual erasure of indigeneity and maintain internal coherence. The one he consolidates the logical elimination, extending the bounds of cellular governance into the entire universe. Every time the two words extinction away from the internal arena is sustainable, you should remind yourself that all insecurities brought by far more fundamental projects of color enclosures, that the common denominator for every single example of arms races, defensible systems, and international corporations, which turns the case and means that there's no bad benefit to the permutation. Now, now the sort of alternative stuff at the top, the alternative stuff at the top, decolonization requires an unwavering commitment to relying perpetuation on a question of sort of fielding language, but using it for your politics. Your ballot can only go towards an ethical incompatibility towards reconciliation. The ethnic permutation of reconciliation, because they seek to rescue solemn normalcy and find common ground in non-communal land. They don't get a permutation. Their severance, which is a issue to make the movement of target and allows them to shift out of the best. Make often second, all links are access to the reconciliation model and justify the links, so there's no net benefit. 3, use the state. We say you can never use the state. 4, they like also just do not substantiate why what these permutations be. They're just like permutation to the affirmative. There was just a permutation, but there was like no explanation of these permutations whatsoever. There are no how colonial finds cannot, and the alternative cannot solve it. Does not assume the specific application and judge instruction I gave you about how decolonization works. They're just like, it's not able to solve the affirmative, but we don't need to solve the affirmative. We can just explain how the affirmative operates, which means that their argument is irrelevant. The last thing they said is that the links are not specifically to the plan. First of all, their framework interpretation was just like weigh the consequences of the plan. So even if I lose our framework interpretation, we still get access to it. So it's irrelevant. Now, all I have to do on the framing page on the case is just to win that the realism stuff is ridiculous. You command after realism, there's just zero explanation. Even in the 1 second is that concession of cellulism is ontological over determines realism, because even if realism is true in some extent, it does not explain all of how cellulism operates. 3 is that if you don't understand the implication of this argument, you did not have a realism flow from the 1AC, then you should not feel comfortable voting on it. None of the extinction stuff matters, given that I'm one the which Mitchell evidence is substitute said the cellular psyche means that there is zero risk of the affirmative opposite. You can just vote negative at any risk of only. Now the advantage stuff, the solemnity stuff, they dropped the young evidence, which kind of implicates that the affirmative gets circumvented. Anyway, they answered the other one, but they conceded that they conceded that monopoly sort of use antitrust lines to their advantage, which turns the affirmative. They also conceded a re-highlighting of Johnson, which proves that they can't solve debris. Mitchell was dropped, so any risk of only vote neg.
230. What was the last argument right as you were running out of time? For like it was right after monopolies use it to advantage.
Oh, Johnson insertion was conceded.
Okay, cool. All right. The F and the K. Starting off with framework. And then the actual K.
I am good. Whatever.
Wait, sorry. I was in the other room. What's the order?
The F and then the K. Is anyone not good? Okay. The affirmative definitely has an extinction scenario. Antitrust application, antitrust prevents space for fundamental resource disparities and ambiguity within the OC that escalates. States have an incentive to attack and nuclear command and control satellites to collapse deterrence and needs a rapid escalation. Drop that the app definitely happens faster than the K. Yes, we agree that the critique is competitive, but you should frame this to a question of trade-off, i.e. you can only vote affirmative or you can only vote negative. Vote affirmative to prevent extinction and then live another day to make sure that natives have the opportunity of life, because that truly matters. They consider the anti-natalism is unintuitive. The line by line on the actual advantage. The drop young evidence stuff. No, we didn't drop it. We said that monopolies are actually agreeing and pursuant to commercialization because they want to protect their assets that happen in space, and they knew that debris and other space management and war, etc., would be bad for that. They say monopolies use it to their advantage. No, it won't, which is the argument above, because the young evidence that has the same advantage. The Johnson insertion was not conceded. They didn't even impact out what this independently means. We said that even if satellites are vulnerable now, which was the last argument on case, is that just increases the risk of debris spiraling conflict even further, or the conflict and escalation to miscalculation will arise. So an antitrust regime that harmonizes all of international space law and sets that out is much better. The framework page. Only fiat and consequences matter. This is an impact debate which boils down to extinction versus the critiques impact. Even for policy-making, research, knowledge, etc. is bad. If you want fairness, turn a blind eye. Framework frames offense and fairness and balances. Trust that way. Yes, there's a limit. This that infinite framework, intersected test of research, communicative form, scholarship, identity, personal experience, rhetoric, Utah, which are infinitely unpredictable. Their model basis 6 minute one is iteratively warn every potential indictment, which creates thin debates, which is a conceded argument from the one era. But our model narrows the debates of material consequences, which are resolution predictable, as well as make us more empathetic to indigenous lives, which is conceded arguments, because those 7 million natives that are happening right now will also die. Fairness is an impact. They wouldn't be okay with you hacking at some because of some arbitrary reasons, such as their race, or refusing to fairly validate their arguments, which that they clearly care about the concept of equality, because game theory is true. This activity is nothing more than a game with marginal educational benefits that we come to as the extracurricular. The tournament structure wins and losses, trophies, rating system, debaters continue commitment to compete, go farther in elimination rounds, proves that the desire for wins ultimately guides our experience, and aiming for a prestige balanced playing field that facilitates that metaverse. So give us the app. If we get the app, then we have won this debate. Basic extinction does drastically outweigh any of the material consequences, all the reps to stats, and etc. All of that stuff does not matter in the name of just voting affirmative to literally live another day, because those are minute in the terms of trade-offs. Now, we'll answer the Mitchell evidence later, but on the frameworks of the actualizing politics and educational stuff, at least the limits, because there are infinite things that they can contest the performances. That argument is that the scholarship we provide is generally good, because that is a humanist rhetoric. Hold us to what we do. Fairness outweighs the performances. Said anyway, that was above third group. All their stuff about framework not condemning racists and other things. They can't do that either. If we were correct that the round was actually racist, the round would stop, because the Dutch would not tolerate that. But insofar as there's room for contestation and promoting the app is a good idea. The burden of rejoinder they do, but their arguments that they should get the app. The ruling such as racist rhetoric, you can problematize that, but we should be able to weigh the affirmative against the policy option. The fairness doesn't matter. Misunderstands the sort of procedural and competitive equity. Yes, we should make the blind field more prestigious. Bounce not going for that class doesn't matter. Mitchell. Mitchell is their only defense to our extinction scenario, but we have iteratively warranted qualified authors that warn why nuclear war would cause extinction. This Mitchell evidence just says that settler psyches might induce extinction, etc. But the alternative can't solve that, and didn't make any of those arguments either independently. Even if settler psyches might lead to extinction, rhetoric, etc., and more pursuing security politics, that plan solves that because it harmonizes those between different states. So it doesn't even matter. The flipping impact calculus and all this stuff doesn't matter. And especially since they're not winning the role of the ballot framing, it doesn't matter as well. Decolonization requires a commitment, and it's not a fiat for politics, which means that it can't solve case. We're not going for the permutation as whether the realism stuff, etc. We don't need an iterative defense of realism, but we do need a defense that it would kill native lives. So if the plan is a good idea and extinction is bad, vote out.
Good debate.
Good debate.
Okay, we have a decision.
I'm here.
Siddharth here. I'll give them a minute. Are either of you seniors?
Nope.
Well, damn, congrats. I'm like really good to not end a career this round. Tom and Siddharth, just let us know when you're here.
Sorry about that. I just came back.
Tom, Rahul, you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I just stepped out for a sec.
And just want to double check Rahul is here.
Oh, sorry, I was here. I was just waiting.
Okay, cool. Congratulations to both debaters on making it to octafinals of the 2022 TOC. Fantastic debate. The decision is a 3-0 for the negative from Parker. I can go first. So I vote negative to endorse decolonization and center Indigenous scholarship and resistance. I think the 2AR is good, but a bit behind on the Lincoln framework debate. Honestly, I think the AF is pretty structurally behind after the 1AR. I think you're not nearly meta enough and need to pick your battles a bit more instead of going for a pretty line-by-line heavy strat. So there are 3 things I need to resolve. First is the framework debate. I conclude that the AF gets to weigh the case, but the negative does get to indict your scholarship. The 2NR is winning that anything else justifies sidestepping discussions, the AF not defending the entirety of their method and not calling out offensive scholarship, which controls the internal link to any fairness offense that the 2AR is going for. The 2AR argument against this is that if people say bad shit, they get called out and lose the round. But this is indicted by the 2NR argument that the 1AR's interpretation does justify not calling out people who say offensive stuff, even if it didn't happen in this round. And that this is why reps matter, at least to some degree, because anything else justifies jettisoning a part of the AF and allowing the AF to sever from their scholarship. All of the extinction stuff I dealt with on the link debate. That's the second part. I think the 2AR is just getting a little too close to the fire. Most of the 2AR is extinction outweighs, with both of the warrants being either A, our authors are qualified enough to make predictions, and B, that if extinction were to happen, it would be bad for natives. I think both of these arguments concede most of the 2NR's analysis about why violence occurs and why that logic itself kind of justifies this violence. The Mitchell link I do think is misunderstood. The 2AR says that the qualified authors thing and that the alt can't solve this, but the AF's international legal harmonization but the AF's legal harmonization can resolve this violence. However, this either proves that the Mitchell link is true, that doing anything to prevent a risk of extinction is the Cheney logic of using securitizing threats to sequence over structural conflicts, which means either Indigenous people are affected the worst, or that the AF solves extinction, and then the Dudney link is true because it reinforces the dominance of settler-led international orders, which is ontologically conditioned against natives. So either the Mitchell link is true, and obviously the AF's logic towards preventing extinction is bad and justifies violence, or the Mitchell link isn't true, and then the Dudney link is because the AF just reinforces and upholds settler international orders. The last thing I just need to double check before I can vote negative is the alternative. I think the 2NR's framework explanation made it so that I can believe the alternative doesn't need to resolve the entirety of their impacts, but instead just provide a better orientation towards the world. The 2AR conceded ontology, which means the alternative is the only possible explanation to resolve violence against natives and overturn settler IR, which means that even if the alt fails, a risk of a link still definitively outweighs. Therefore, a focus on extinction threats follows the logic of settler elimination, The AF's appeal to that logic justifies endless violence against natives, and the alternative is the only possible orientation towards resolving that violence. So I end up voting negative.
Yeah, I can go next. I largely agree with Matt. I think the biggest problem of the AF is that you really get bogged down on like the 7 line by line arguments of extinction outweighs instead of just like grouping it. Like they're pretty much like the same kind of arguments, like same 3 classes of arguments. So I think that I should group it. Like you need to be contesting like ontology, the alt in the 1AR, like just making like framework extinction outweighs like very kind of easy to NR, right? So first, the framework debate. One, I think a lot of the fairness impact calculus, while rather good in the 2AR, was very, very new. The 1NC put their framework stuff in the 1NC, which means that I don't think that the AF gets new responses to the 1NC stuff in the 2AR. Second is I think that the AF is conceding that the AF should be able to defend their representation. Second, they can weigh the representations against the critique, which mitigates some of the limits offense, which means that I think that you have a rather like medium-sized strength of link to your offense, but I think you're largely conceding the performativity arguments in the 1AR, and you kind of just try to respond to it in the 2AR about how the AF's model debate reinforces settler colonial ideas, which means that I think that the negative accesses their offense much better to settler colonial like genocide and colonial structures rather than the affirmative accessing their fairness offense on terms of just like a strength of link debate. I don't think like I buy the 2NR's arguments that's like if we win a link we win the AF. I think it just changes too much from what the framework arguments were in the 1NC, but I do think that the negative gets access to the links of representation. I don't think plain focus is how I view this debate. Now, the extinction framing. I think that the AF is really light on this in the 1AR and the 2AR. I don't think the AF contests the link at any point about how extinction rhetoric is used to justify settler colonialism and perpetual genocide against Native Americans. The negative does a lot of argumentation for why genocide kind of outweighs the affirmative. The only kind of weighing argument I get from the affirmative, other than extinction is bad for Native people, is the time frame argument. And I'm kind of receptive and sympathetic to the 2NR claim that this wasn't really fleshed out. I'm not sure why the AF scenario is like much faster than the negative scenario. The negative is like at least making like arguments that are like it's colonialism is happening right now. Like, why is there a time frame differential? I can't explain to you from what I've heard from the 2AR and the 1AR, right? So I think like at like kind of like a surface level, I think that the negatives arguments about genocide is kind of the only weighing that's kind of done in this kind of debate, other than just like extinction is bad for Native people, which, as Matt said, the negative kind of says that the logic of this kind of extinction prevention perpetuates this further Native genocide, right? The other place that I think I can vote for is this root cause argument was, I think, really straight dropped. And I think it acts as kind of defense against your scenario, because I think if the AF still relies upon the underlying representations of liberalism and colonialism that kind of perpetuate logics of genocide, warfare, threat construction, and extinction, then I think that at least cuts the affirmative's ability to solve extinction, because you rely upon the same kind of representations that cause these arguments in the first place. Like, I don't think the 2NR ever explicitly said like link turns the AF, but they made those kind of arguments about how their firm's logic kind of still relies upon this. So I think that it does kind of turn and undercut their firm's offense ability to prevent extinction. I think that's it for me.
Yeah, I pretty much find myself in agreement with Jonathan and Matt. I guess I'll make a couple more big picture comments that just might be helpful. I agree with Jonathan that the 2AR on sort of fairness and predictability clash arguments is a little bit new, and there is some pressure in this debate to start that earlier given the 1N. I agree with all that, but I think there's also just kind of like a meta comment here, which is I think like there are a couple arguments from the 2N that kind of help frame this debate, and I'm not sure the 2AR takes the best route toward working on them. So one is this claim that just true equity, competitive equity in debate is not really possible. And so you have to ask yourself, like, what is the value to the activity? The value to the activity probably can't just be making it more and more closer to the ideal level of competition, because we're not really going to get there. And what's the point of that anyway? So that's one argument. And another argument is just, look, the AF can definitely still have clash you do, just need to be prepared to defend your scholarship, but that's not like an unlimited domain. I mean, you just have to be prepared to say plan focus matters, it's good, policymaking is good, stuff like that. You don't necessarily need to interact with all the specificity of the K. And those arguments, they're not like necessarily game over arguments, but the reason that I point them out is that the tactic that the AF takes in the 2AR, which is a little bit of like it, I don't think this is mandated by the 1AR, let me put it that way, is that you sort of like bite the bullet fully. You just fully go for like, no, the only thing that matters is the trophies and our fair access to the trophies. And that's like, I think maybe not the best turn for you to take, because it obviously triggers just the full weight of all the arguments that are coming out of the 1N framework. And it puts more pressure on just like the what's the point of this debate type question. Like, isn't there anything else that matters in between? Like, the round is so egregious that we all stop it and call it. And like, there's no value to any of it except winning the trophies. I think there's kind of a lack of nuance there that puts the AF in a rough position. I mean, on the substance level, I don't have a lot more to say. Like, I pretty much just agree with Matt and Jonathan on the question of, whether the AF is really winning the extinction scenario, whether it's really fleshed out the time frame arguments that would be necessary to put like the full weight of the 2AR weighing, and as well as the root cause claim and the extinction rhetoric claim. I think the only thing that I would kind of add is, and this is really just an implication of all that, but one of the things that the 2AR is really implicitly dependent on is that the AF has like naive access. I don't mean naive in like an insulting way. I just mean like in a straightforward, intuitive, everyday way to the idea of like vote AF to live another day, right? That's like at its core, the reason why we need to vote AF on the 2AR's view. And I think one of the big problems with that is the question of what counts as extinction, what is living another day, is problematized by the neg, right? And all that's happening in the link analysis that's just getting conceded by the AF. And so I don't really think as a judge, a person would have access to the idea like, well, I just have this conception of what extinction is, in what way it matters, who it's relevant to, what it means at an ontological level. And I just don't want that to happen right now. So I'll vote AF. And I think that's like, in some scenarios, a fine way to go. But in this scenario, in combination with doing no work at all on the link level, it's hard to generate an AF ballot by going in that direction. But yeah, I'm in agreement. I did think that this was a good round. I was happy to see it. And congratulations to both of you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any more questions. Good luck, Rahul. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for
Great tournament.
Good debate. Bye.